Hey, hi, Krista. I am so glad to be with you today. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your super busy schedule to talk with me about menopause.
I'm super excited to be here. My favorite topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And it's
is.
becoming my favorite topic too, honestly. Like, I'm not fully into menopause yet, but I'm getting there. And I had a surgery that kind of boosted me more into that way. So I'm super excited to hear about your experience. Tell me a little bit about like what you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I refer to myself as like the menopause wellness coach. I love, love, love helping women transition through menopause with more ease and comfort and joy. And I really do specifically love to hit on the points of anxiety, body pain, and insomnia because, well, those three areas really affected me myself the most. So yeah, women anywhere from that perimenopause to postmenopause stage of life is a crucial stage that I love supporting women in because it's not easy for some, easier for others, which is fascinating, but it's generally bumpy for most women because I would say about 80% of women in North America are experiencing something uncomfortable. I almost find it hard to believe there's 20% that isn't, but most women are experiencing something. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I like what you said about like it's the transition. Um, One thing I wondered, so what came up for me is that, what's the lingo here? Because everybody's like, oh, I'm in menopause. I was always taught that menopause was the time in which we decided that we crossed over, like certain criteria, and then we were postmenopausal. So there's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause. Is that how you see it too? How would you describe it?
Yeah, that's more or less it. Maybe slightly different. Perimenopause is pretty much all the way up to having had no periods for an entire year. So, let's back up. The word menopause, like you're kind of insinuating, it literally means the pause of the last menses. So it's when you had literally your last period, that moment in time, literally. It's just the Western world. Doctors want to say that let's count 12 months after that last period, and then we'll say that moment is menopause. I tend to think of it as the last period, but that moment is menopause. And literally from that moment on, you're in postmenopause. So, really, most women are kind of in perimenopause, in the transition, or now in postmenopause, basically. Yeah. Yeah, it's a
That's
little tricky.
It is kind of tricky. It is kind of tricky. And well, so this is part of the reason why I wanted to talk to you today too,
Yeah.
because as a functional nutrition coach, I have a message board that I can go and work with other functional nutrition coaches and our teachers. And I went in there and I typed in menopause and nothing came up on this board. That literally people can ask questions, like any practitioners can ask questions about anything. And I typed in menopause and nothing came up. And then I typed in perimenopause and
Right.
nothing came up. And what hit me with that was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I know that there's things, I mean, because I'm a coach too, so I know that there's things you can do for people in peri and postmenopause, but why don't we talk about it? And I think the most common thing that I hear from women is like, I had nobody to talk to. I
Mhm.
had no support. I'm sure you can relate. Like, tell me like how you deal with that, like in
Yeah.
your clientele or in your thoughts.
Yeah, there's a variety on the spectrum happening there. I think there is some women that feel like a little more shaming or invisible around that time in their lives, and I think some women want to feel like they can get through it in a sort of a strong way and not really have to even say a word or admit to it. But I'm starting to see more and more women starting to converse with, especially a close girlfriend or sisters, and maybe even that might be the opportunity. They might speak with their mom. What was happening, in your experience, it's best to try and figure that out. Because an interesting fact is that your menopause experience or mine is more likely to be similar to a sister that is close in age to you because you more likely experienced a similar life. Your mom's experience is more likely to be a little different, but that's not entirely true. You might get some clues and cues from your mom about how it went down for them. But yeah, I find it interesting that some women are very silent around this. They almost don't want to bring it up, and others are starting to open the conversation, especially if you see it on Instagram. I'm surprised you didn't get more information where you're typing it in. It's a big deal. It's actually a bigger deal in going into puberty is the way they put it now. And that's a big deal when everything changes. So it's like a reversal of puberty and everything's going shutting down in that respect with the
Yeah.
ovaries. So it is a huge deal to talk about.
Wow. I like how you just said that. It's reversal of puberty, which
Mhm.
actually kind of helps to frame it in such a way, because I like even remember when I first had my period and the lead up to like waiting for it to show up, and then all of a sudden now like technically a woman and working through all of those pieces, but I was like 12.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
like how you say it's like a reversal of that. I never heard it said like that, but that makes total sense.
Yeah, the ovaries were opening, starting to work, and you're ovulating at whatever it was, 10 to 15, and starting to get the periods. And now the ovaries are shutting down and not producing the estradiol that makes you release an egg anymore. And then therefore you're not going to build up a lining of blood in your uterus, and everything's going to stop like that. So mind you, there's different ways people go into menopause as well, but in a more natural course of things, the ovaries stop producing estradiol.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then they kind of shut down, and then the ripple effect of what it means to live without much estrogen anymore is kind of that fallout side of menopause, where I'm helping women look at those symptoms, and then there's the silent ones too, actually. So there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. What would you say the top symptoms or things that women are looking, well, I want to say symptoms that show up in their menopause or perimenopause that they're looking for support around? Like what do you see shows up most?
Yeah, I would say hot flashes are the most classic. And then at nighttime, you'd call those night sweats. By the way, we really should call them vasomotor constrictions because
Mm.
they truly are like it's a big deal what's going on with your blood vessels in your heart. The body pain is a big deal. That one's way more common than you'd think. Weight gain is one that people are like, what the heck? I've always been eating the same, and now I'm getting a lot more weight on the middle area.
Uh-huh.
Anxiety, I may have mentioned that already. That's a really big deal. So those are probably the really big ones, I'd say. Anxiety, pain. Yeah, most of those that I just mentioned. Yeah.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about body pain. Like I'm just thinking in terms of like I was talking to a client, that has like hip pain, but when you say body pain, I'm thinking it's bigger than that. So describe that a little bit for us.
Yeah, most women it rests in a certain joint. Like if your client says hip pain, it can present like achy joints a little bit everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Or like in my own case, is it was sort of like started in one spot, went mostly to the shoulders and neck, but one day or two it's in the hip. So it can kind of randomly move around, but most people seem to have it settle in one area or joint. That's very common. Like I'd say the hip is really common, the neck and shoulders are really common areas. And then stiffness, I see that one as it can be related to the menopause, the estrogen, but it also could be just related to stiff fascia too. Your fascia is
Mm,
becoming harder to stay hydrated and supple as you're getting older. So it could be that kind of a pain and stiffness too. But a
mm,
lot of women are kind of like noticing it in joints or like a pulsing pain in the joints. Yeah. And
mm.
just so with your one client, like the hip pain, a lot of women get misdiagnosed with bursitis, it's called. So you got to
Yes.
be kind of careful. Doctors are kind of quick to say that. Just read think it was a blog post or an article maybe a couple of weeks ago on specifically that. And quite often women that end up getting a little bit more support, maybe in the area of HRT even, or hormone therapy, all of a sudden that pain can go away. So it may not be quite a bursitis. It might be more of estrogen, lack of estrogen in your joints, because that is actually the reason everyone's having a lot of the pain in their joints is because of the lack of estrogen, unless there's something autoimmune going on,
Yeah,
like arthritis or something. Yeah.
totally. Wow, these are all really great points. And we're going to come back. We're going to talk about hormone replacement therapy a little
Yeah,
bit in a
sure.
little bit, because I think, yeah, I think that's really great that you mentioned that. Gosh, now I have all these thoughts that I want to ask you, because like it really opens up just so many things. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so all right, well, let me ask you this. What do you think that all menopausal women, and I'm trying not to use the word should, but what do you think all menopausal women would benefit from hearing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the stress resilience at this time of life is massive. I know we often think about the food and how we're moving and all the lifestyle things, which are also really, really important.
Yeah.
But when you go into menopause, your adrenals are going to take over mostly in producing these hormones that you just lost. Some estrogen comes from there, androgens, cortisol, all sorts of hormones. And so your adrenals need to be working so well to help that transition go smoother, because that's where you're going to get it. You also get it from adipose tissue, like fat tissue in your body, and a
Mhm.
bit from the brain. So incidentally, women that might be just carrying a little more weight, they're actually probably carrying a little more estrogen in their adipose tissue. They
Yeah.
might actually experience a less symptoms, but not necessarily. So it kind of is a case by case basis. But sometimes a very lean, athletic woman can experience quite a few symptoms because of that lack of fat. So women, the adrenals have a lot to do with your stress levels, huge. So I think that's the little bit of the unknown secret that women need to hear, is that how you're going into menopause, that 8 to 10 years before, is crucial. Like that, if there's any time you could prepare, it's actually that decade before your stress levels. Like what can you do to minimize or help you with the stress? And of course, I really quickly love to go to self-care, because women in their 40s, wow, we're not always so good at it. And it's because a lot, if you think about it, like your average woman, everyone's in a different situation, but many women in their 40s, they're often working, maybe full time. If they're a mom, they're likely have teenagers, like they're likely in the thick of parenting, right? They might even third have parents that might need help too. So they could be sandwiched between kids and parents and a job. And it's kind of the time in careers you're taken off, I think sometimes, and yet you might not be feeling very good. So it's not an easy time at all to really look at the self-care, slow down and figure out what you need. And yet it's so pivotal to menopause when it's about to head your way. So yeah, the stress piece is big. We really need to slow down and really ask yourself, how can I support myself with stress now for even later? And then you're going to need it later too. Always,
Totally.
right? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So basically, like 10, if we're looking, like if we are thinking that we're going to have menopause somewhere around 50, I know it's different. So maybe someone in their 40s is thinking ahead and supporting their body in stress and trying not to burn the candle on both ends and to
Mhm.
exercise self-care. And then that's equally as important, if not more, maybe than postmenopausal. But what
Awesome.
happens when a woman shows up, like for instance, comes to see you and she's been in menopause now for like 6 or 7 years and she's just kind of like gutted through it and
Mhm.
is finally like, oh my gosh, I need some support. I'm not getting any relief.
Mhm.
What do you say to a woman there who is like, is it never too late to start?
Yeah, yeah, it's never too late to start. Exactly. But this, you brought up a really good point actually there, because I think some women get through the transition. So the first 12 months is kind of without a period, the first 12 months is sort of traditionally or anecdotally the hardest, but some women kind of get through it unscathed. And then maybe because their adrenals were working so well, but let's say 5, 6 years down the road, now they're not feeling very well. But generally, they don't equate it back to the menopause changes. They more likely might think in their mind, oh no, here comes the onslaught of symptoms with aging. Now I'm stiff. Now I'm like got achy joints, or now I can't sleep well. What possibly could happen, but you should always, see your doctor and check out everything because there's so many different things that things could be. So check it all out. But what could be happening is now their levels of estrogen and progesterone have fallen to a level now that it's irritating their body now. And it wasn't 5 years ago, but they don't tend to equate it to that. They think it's just age. And their doctor might do the exact same thing and go, you know what, you're through menopause. Let's check out everything else. And that's good that they do, but they don't always think about the fallout still of those hormones could feel worse 5, 10 years later. And I
Yeah.
do feel badly for women like that because there's a little bit like a window of opportunity there, like a really big window of opportunity in the transition to make it a smoother transition. If you want me to talk more about that, I don't know.
Let's do that right now, because does it have to do with hormone replacement and other things?
Yeah,
Let's
there
talk
is.
about
Yeah. So, hormone replacement therapy, or really the term nowadays that says menopause hormone therapy, because replacement is a little derogatory, to be honest, on women. It's sort of like saying, all right, we're replacing something that you don't have anymore, and you can feel like literally, spiritually, like you're less than without them. So when you just say menopause hormone therapy, it's more like we're just talking about topping up or replenishing some very low levels of hormones. And that's kind of a logical thought in the mind, right? Like, let's maybe top up something that we used to have really robust amounts of. So when you are doing that as the hormones are falling, then the transition isn't like this, like falling off a cliff 5 years later, let's bring them back up. So it's much easier to try and get those hormones to transition down at a slower rate, right? Or keep them at a little bit of, a better level than having them completely fall out. And that's why you'll sometimes hear people say, yeah, there's an ideal window. The estrogen matters. It's a window of opportunity to grab. But I do understand that some women aren't presenting symptoms and their doctor won't do much if you're saying, I'm good. I don't have anything going on. So it's a tricky one because now there's a lot of evidence, and I hope especially for our daughters or nieces that we're going to see more evidence in research on women that shows the preventative side of it, because there's really 3 reasons why doctors can, and it might, I'm in Canada, in Vancouver, BC, and rules are similar, but they might be a little different in the US. But there's 3 main reasons you take hormone therapy, and I'll tell you, one is for hot flashes. So severe hot flashes are important because it's an effect on your cardiovascular system. It's serious.
yeah.
2 is bone loss and looking like you're on the trajectory for osteoporosis. That's a big deal, bigger deal than more women will have bone fractures in their elderly years than the breast cancer statistics. So, and then if you're having to deal with bone fractures when you're elderly, to be honest, yeah, if you're really elderly and it's a hip, like 1 in 3 women, or actually it might even be as high as 50% might not even survive the year. It's massive, the osteoporosis. And the third one is cognitive decline. Oh no, sorry. In terms of HRT, the third one is GUSM. That's a big long word, genitourinary menopause syndrome. So that's all the changes in your vulva area. So that is another reason to take HRT. So those are the 3 sort of true certified reasons you can be taking it. But if you were to go to a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, they'll look at it from a different lens, a little bit more of a natural lens. And let's look at the prevention as well side of it. So easier to sort of get your hands on it that way than maybe an MD even. So
Sure. Gosh,
yeah.
wait, I have so many questions. You're such a wealth of information. So what's interesting, so I discovered I had endometriosis last year and
Oh,
had a hysterectomy in April of 2023. And then I was able to keep one ovary.
okay.
And that the other ovary had to go because it was encased in endometriosis. But I felt great for about 3 months. And then all of a sudden, like I could tell all my hormones were like going wonky. And we tested them and ended up, I'm right now taking a progesterone at night when I go to bed and a testosterone cream in the morning, but I'm not supplementing with estrogen, mostly
Mhm.
because estrogen can fuel endometriosis, but also because I still had some estrogen. I was just low in testosterone and progesterone, but estrogen was still functioning because mostly I think I was estrogen, I'm pretty certain I was estrogen dominant before my surgery and probably had been for a good 10 years. And we don't want that either. There was a lot of symptoms associated with that. Um, but I think that I work with a naturopath, and what she was, so smart. And I said, we got to do something. And she's like, well, you're only 48, because I'm only 48.
Mhm.
And, we worry about bone loss when we go through changes in that. And also because surgical menopause can be more disruptive on the body because it's a harder break.
Yeah.
Right. So I was just thinking about how you said like prevention is so important. So any comments that you have on that, but then also going more into like, is the only way to prevent that transition at a slower rate that you mentioned, is the only way to do that with HRT, or are there other diet and lifestyle pieces that you
Mhm.
often use to also do the prevention? Like, I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but I'm just thinking like, what other ways can we do prevention?
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely lifestyle things for sure. The hormone therapy, though, I would say it's up there. I just don't want people to think of it like I kind of say like a Band-Aid solution. That is the best way for me to describe that because I do feel it has its place and role. And I'm glad you saw a naturopath and got your hormones tested because that's the other part that's so great is get them tested and find out because you realized you had estrogen, enough of it in you. And when people even say they want balanced hormones, you're trying to kind of in the post-menopause stage, anyways, you're trying to be somewhat even with those progesterone and estrogen levels. Whereas pre-menopause, you need the surges of the estrogen to ovulate. So it's a more of a wave happening before, but after you want them to feel even, so you're not in an estrogen dominant situation, right?
Yep.
Um, but in the silent, just so what they do in a silent way, they work for you in terms of the cardiovascular disease prevention, the bone loss prevention, and cognitive decline quite a bit. So those are the three areas that they're not all fully studied, but I know there's ongoing studies going on right now, especially with Alzheimer's and estrogen therapy. So there are studies going on. So those three areas they're actually kind of the silent killers of women. You can't tell they're going on at first, the bone loss. You can't always tell until you have a bad fracture.
Yep.
One interesting thing, just, the LDL, like this is really common. People go get a blood test and all of a sudden at midlife, their LDL shoots up. It's like,
Yep.
what just happened, right? It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of women. And that just goes to show, it's literally shows that estrogen is heart protective and it just dropped. And so that's why that's happening. And the third thing, yeah, bonus, I said them all. So those are why HRT is kind of helpful on those on that front. But in terms of lifestyle, well, for sure with the bone loss, I mean, the movement and finding a way to do weight bearing type exercise is crucial. And that has to happen really for all women. If you have daughters, by the way, if you can do it, you build the most bone before 25. So you actually want to build the most bone possible before 25. And you can actually end up going into menopause with 20 to 30% more, would you believe, than someone that didn't exercise in those younger years. So important to do that at a younger age and then just keep doing it in your 20s, 30s. But when you get into the middle-aged years, you want to consider weightlifting, or if that doesn't float your boat, I mean, yoga, Pilates, things where you're using your body, uphill walking, biking uphill, like anything where there's resistance, like a lot of weight bearing on your muscles,
Yeah.
really, really important. And a little cardiovascular for sure for that as well.
Yeah.
So that's important. The cognitive thing, I'll just touch a little on cognitive. That's really fascinating because that bothers a lot of women at midlife. It's sort of like, I'm not getting the words out. I'm like worried, like I'm in the middle of a meeting, I can't speak. And so that's scary because we want our faculties and want to be able to rise. And a lot of it happens as women are peaking in their careers. So it's a big deal. It's almost shows how women are almost being it's a disservice to us in a sense, menopause, because we actually, some of us literally retire at midlife. They feel like they don't even have their faculties to get through right when they probably should be promoted, and men are being promoted. So this is a crucial time. So the cognitive thing I want all the women to know is that for most women, it's a blip for a few years. Like most women's brains recalibrate after 3 or 4 or 5 years. Like they just kind of go back, and it's like, because this happened, I noticed with my mom, like, the words are missing and things like that. But she, man, has a sharp memory now at 80. So I see that with some women where it just sort of recalibrates, but not for all women. So some women may end up going on that track for the Alzheimer's. And then I just want to mention there's so many aspects to that too, because
I know.
diabetes is also considered Alzheimer's. So watching blood sugars affects your cognitive health. So you do want to be eating a balanced diet without these really sharp rises in your blood sugar, because that can affect getting prediabetes and onto the cognitive problems. So yeah, so definitely, working on your brain health, and whether it's through your diet, moving, supplements, there's so many ways to do that as well. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, diet's huge too. Like you can't get through midlife without looking at what you're eating. It's like
Eating.
the medicine to everything. So
Oh my
much to
gosh.
unpack. Yeah.
So
So
amazing. I mean, really, it's just a holistic approach. Like,
yeah.
it's what you're talking about is just that holistic approach and the holistic understanding of like how do we support this whole functioning system, but you're tapping in on the emotional piece of, maybe leaving the workforce because you can't find your word, a person can't find their words while other people are excelling, or feeling in some way like that when women kind of when they get to menopause, it's like I'm done, I'm like washed up, that
Mhm.
feeling of like self-worth can
Yeah.
change. And then also, as the body is changing, like you mentioned, like women will get, weight gain. And oftentimes it's around that middle area, or they get more stout in their, body. And I think that, that can also add to that emotional aspect. So like that's where that self-care and the self-love, and like you mentioned, like even in the beginning of like that stress resilience of like finding a way to be okay in your body, and to be loving enough to yourself to be allowing the changes to occur, and then supporting them in ways that you're able,
Yeah.
by attending to diet and lifestyle and maybe hormone replacement and all those kinds of things. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, they both come together really nicely, and some do get away without needing any of the hormone therapy. I do actually think though in the future, this is my hunch or inclination, is that I feel like in 20 years or less, we're going to see more and more people use the hormone therapy for preventative reasons. I just feel it's coming, and the research will catch up. And that I just wish every woman could have almost like a full-on assessment at midlife, where they just, your doctor or naturopath really takes the time to assess it all and find out what the best paths are for you, and whether the hormone therapy is a good match with the lifestyle pieces at the same time. And I think we're going to see it used in a more preventative way in the future. And right now it's just those other three reasons I talked about.
Yep.
But I think you'll see a lot more of it in the future. And back to the estrogen a little bit. Estrogen, it's interesting. It's equated with confidence. There's a when it drops in you, a lot of women start to feel that lack in confidence as well. And that's why sometimes they just sort of retire, like disappear from their work and just stop everything. And that's why I think those women too need to know that options out there, because you can start taking some hormone therapy within 10 years of your last period. There you can start in that 10 years. So
Yep.
48 to 58 even, or 51 to 61. So, but there is a generally a nice window there. They want it to be within those 10 years. And some MDs are saying, be on it for only 5 or 10 years. But the ones that are looking at the longer term research, it's looking like women are going to go even longer in order to just feel a little bit better. But maybe you're just reducing the dose slightly as you're getting older, right? Or
Yeah,
transitioning off of it. Because no woman should be, yeah, I think no woman should be retiring and feeling horrible and suffering and changing their whole life up around this massive change. And it is a massive change, but there's just a lot of ways you can go at it holistically and through hormones. So
totally. Oh my gosh. Just thinking, I love what you're saying about, because you're right. Especially with like estrogen related cancers and other things, like is part
mhm.
of the reason why hormone replacement was kind of like taboo or wasn't really, but you're right. The research is shifting and growing and changing to show that there are far more pluses than there are cons to hormone
Yeah.
replacement. And what I love about what you just said is I'm just envisioning a world where like every woman who's in midlife just gets like embraced and is like, hey, let's just do a full workup on you and just like help you holistically and all the parts and pieces so that you can move into this stage of your life with all the infinite wisdom that you carried from like raising kids and working and just being a woman and like, yeah, let's set you up for success so that you can be this like beautiful crone,
Yes. That's
right?
right.
That and I think that would be such a beautiful shift in our culture, which right now is so loving of these like young, thin, these like vibrantly young women where we're missing out on these vibrantly beautiful, wisdomful women in midlife.
Oh yeah.
What a
Yeah.
beautiful thing that could be.
Yeah. Some
Yes.
women are feeling the invisible, like they go invisible at this time when it really should be the opposite. Like there are cultures out there, right? Like I think
Yes.
Japan's a good example where when you get to that crone stage, you are looked up to like the people that have the advice and all the wisdom to give you. And it's a stage where maybe they might slow down or retire, at 65 or whenever, 70, and they
Yeah.
have even more time to give back and to tell their stories and their wisdom. So it is a time to celebrate, really. It's a bit of a rite of passage, but
Yeah.
it's an important one. And I didn't even touch upon the whole spiritual side of it, but I love getting into that too. But it is a time when women feel the whole identity in them shift. Their voice becomes like stronger if as long as they're taking note of it, like if they can speak their truth. And it's so much healthier because if women are just swallowed in symptoms and trying to feel like, oh, I'll just survive this in the corner for 5 years and suffer through this, you may never even come out. Like there's sort of another side where you learn your strength and your voice, and you can speak up for what you care about and
Yeah.
anything. Almost like some women start whole new businesses and create like charities. Like this is the time to do what you love, and but you do have to feel good in your body, and you can totally. So it's fascinating how we become more true to ourselves, actually. In fact, anthropologically, this is so fascinating. Like they say when you do the research that the estrogen is really there to kind of help you nurture people around you. Like that's why you want to create a nest and get married in a sense and have kids, like, or for those who want to. The estrogen is makes you feel like you want to nurture, but when it falls down, like, and starts to decline, the attention literally, like, it turns on you. And it's like, okay, I want to look after me. This is kind of what more naturally happens. And a lot of women want to go a little bit quiet for a little while. Almost they call it the forest dweller period. They almost want to go to the forest, have a little quiet as they're transitioning, and see what do they want? What do they really need in life right now? What makes them tick? And that process, in my opinion, is really important that you do that so that you come out of this like going, yeah, I'm important now. And generally, most cases, if you had kids in your early 30s or mid 30s, your kids are leaving the house when all this is happening or going off to college.
Yeah.
And almost perfect time anthropologically to just now turn a little bit more focus on yourself and your own self needs and not so much your husband's and your husband and your kids. it's
Kids
it's
and
a bit more about you now, and you can fit it all in together and make it all juicy, but the attention and without the estrogen is becomes more the focus on you.
oh my God, I just love that. Love, love, love that, Krista. I haven't even like heard that before. I just love that. And I know you have a daughter, which she is so lucky to have you as like shepherding her
Yeah.
along, and just thinking about and relating to what you just said, because my son is about to graduate from high school and I only have one. So he's about to graduate, and I'm seeing like I'm not fully in menopause yet, but I'm, working through different changes, and also seeing that shift of, what after he leaves the nest and how to nurture myself. And you even touched on it. Like, I know we're building businesses, and taking care of businesses, and discovering what it is that we really love and what lights us up. Because oftentimes we don't, you're right, when we're nurturing our kids and our families, and we don't have the time to take care of us.
Yeah.
And I always like talk to, like, when I'm working with women through gut health, and that's my niche. But when I'm working through that, I'm always like, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to find out what gives us joy.
Hmm.
Especially because a lot of the people I work with are women from all stages of their, some are just recently had a baby or still having children, in childbearing time, and some
Hmm.
are all the way up through 75, 80. So it kind of, there's a whole spectrum of the people that I work with. And I think the biggest thing is like shifting into that way of life that brings you joy, where you can nurture self and grow your own gifts. And you just put that so beautiful. I didn't know like it was like a forest dweller. That's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah, it is cool. It is, it's a time for you, and the joy is really important. Like what lights you up? I always ask my own clients, what makes you feel passionate and juicy? And we literally will write like 1 year away visions and 5 year away visions. So you really kind of picture it and see it, and what lights you up, and
Yeah.
what kind of baby steps can you take to get there, you know?
Oh
So
yeah.
it's a big deal this time of life when you can actually, yeah, start to think about what do you want, you
Yeah.
know?
I
Yeah.
know of time for it, which is so cool. Like
I
some
know.
people, but you're right, in that sandwich generation of taking care of parents at the same time of taking care of young, kids or budding adults, there is a little stickiness there, but gosh,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that makes me think of like, is there like one, I don't even know how to put that, like one action or one thing that you notice that you would love like all of your clients or all women to do, like an action that they could do to help be their best in menopause?
Yeah. I feel like it's almost a little bit more of a thought, but it goes along the same lines. Like I'm a bit of a control freak at times, and menopause really is taught a little bit of surrendering too. So we all can control the controllables, right? So, diet or movement and all of that, but you don't know how your body's going to do as you go through it. So there's a little bit of a surrendering and a flow that you have to kind of also meet somewhere in the middle, and kind of um, I almost feel like you have to be in the present, like come into the present and deal with what's in front of you. There's the controllables, but there's also that flow. And so living in the present, I think, really actually helps you manage this stage of life more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Oh,
And you
I
can do
love
it with
that.
meditation. That's probably my big thing actually, is
Med-
daily meditation puts me into that more Zen state of being in the present, and
yeah.
starts me off calm in the day. It helps the stress resilience. So it's one of my biggest game changers in the last 6 years is the meditation.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I've gone in so many different types of meditation, and, was working with a teacher for almost 3 or 4 years of working through meditation and actually having like a regular sitting practice. And now I just meditate in the beginning of my day and at the end of my day, but it's more loose and free. Like, I meditate. I also talk to, ask for support from my archangels,
Hmm.
so those pieces of just closing and beginning the day and getting present is
Hmm.
yeah, it's such a beautiful practice. And something that in modern life is harder to carve out time sometimes to do.
Yeah,
And I think
it
it's
is.
so important to just carve out that
Yeah.
time.
A habit. It's a habit. And when you take it, if you do it long enough and you take it away, you'll notice. I think you'll notice it more. But the beginning, I'd say the first month, just kind of got to get into that daily habit. And I'd always say start with 3 minutes or 5. And for me, it's 10 minutes. So that's about all, 10, 15 minutes every day. And then that's it. So yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't take much. I mean,
take long.
yeah,
Mhm.
no, I'm usually at least 5 to 15 depending, but I used to sit for a full hour twice a day, and whew, that was hard, and I really loved that time, but it's different for me now. So yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, it's not necessarily quantity as it is like just dropping in.
Yeah, quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh. Well,
Yeah.
I've so enjoyed talking with you. Is there anything, I'm just looking at my notes here. Is there anything else that, wow, there was one question I had actually about stiff fascia. Like you
Oh,
said something
right.
about
Yeah.
stiff fascia, like not being hydrated enough.
Yeah, that's a big deal because people feel stiffness a lot at middle age. And it's that layer under the skin on top of the muscles. It's what kind of keeps everything in its place. And the research is showing so many more nerve endings in it than they ever realized. So it's when it gets um, almost like moved or put in the wrong position for too long, you feel that big time. So at midlife, again, being hydrated with fascia comes two ways. People think naturally like water, and yeah, drink water. But the other piece is actually remembering to just be moving supplely throughout the day. Like when you sit in one position or lie down in one position for long extended periods of time and you get up, that's usually, and you're stiff, that's often a feeling of you just got this fascia got too dehydrated. When you're moving around, even just whether it's washing dishes or doing the laundry, you're moving your body supplely, which helps hydrate fascia. And
Mhm.
then the other key with water is to drink it not all at once, like big glasses all at once, which kind of fills your pelvic, it fills your bladder really quickly, makes you go to the washroom. But when you're sipping every, 7, 10 minutes or something, keep drinking, but slower at a slower pace,
Yeah.
that helps fascia stay hydrated as well. But the moving piece, people don't really realize helps your fascia stay more loose and supple than staying still for long periods of
Yeah.
time. It's really important that you keep moving. So that's why I now like don't look at, washing dishes is so negative anymore. It's just like it's a time to be up after dinner and keep your
Yeah.
body moving, right? So
It's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, sure, I'll go get that laundry and carry it up the stairs multiple times a day. And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm thinking today I've definitely sat a lot in appointments today. But gosh,
Yeah.
anything else that you want to share upon closing? Like any other, I mean, you've shared so many beautiful pearls of wisdom. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that
Yeah. It's a challenging time sometimes because you don't know what's coming. So I think that anxiety might come around the fear of the unknown. Like, what is my situation going to be like? That fear of that. So another spin on it, obviously being in the present moment is important in the flow, but maybe just being really grateful and thankful that you got to experience it. There's actually women that don't even get to this stage of life. We could just flip the whole concept around and go, yay, we got to experience menopause. We've lived long enough to experience this amazing shift that brings lots to it. So we got to experience it and be here for it. So
mm,
it's not all negative.
I love that.
Yeah.
So
Thank-
awesome. So awesome. Tell us a little bit about where you coach out of and your business. Like if anybody wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Yeah, I'm here, like I said, in Vancouver, but I can work globally around the world because I use Zoom like many health coaches do. So I can reach people anywhere in the world. And I have my website, which is bloomingrosewellness.com. And I'm on Instagram, and that handle is at bloomingrose.wellness. Yeah. So same name, bloomingrose.wellness on Instagram. So you can find me there. Yeah. And I love to coach one-on-one on Zoom just like this. It's very easy to reach people this way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds great. So
Yeah.
Blooming Rose Wellness, like and Krista Hansen. So
Yes. The last name's Hansen with an E-N and Krista with a K.
yes,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for taking your time to share with us today and just to bring so much of your knowledge. I really appreciate it. And I know a lot of people will be grateful for that too.
Yeah. Thank
So
you. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure. And I love talking about this topic. So thank you.
Yeah, it shows. It's awesome.
Yeah.